Oh yeah, let's talk about ventilations. So when it comes to ventilations, so I normally do ventilations in purple. So the options are, do they have a tube in their throat or do they not have a tube? If they have a tube in their throat, now it's going to be different for adult versus pediatric. If they have a tube coming out of their throat, then how do you do compressions compared to ventilations?
Continuous.
Yeah.
Continuous.
So if they have a tube, and only if they have a tube, and that tube could be an eye gel, it could be an endotracheal tube, it could be an LMA, any kind of tube. If they have a tube that's coming out of their throat, then it's continuous CPR at just a rate of 100 to 120 compressions a minute, nonstop for 2 straight minutes. And how often do you ventilate for an adult? 1 breath every how often? 1
5 to
breath
6 seconds.
every 6 seconds for an adult. For a child or infant, we're going to do 1 breath every how often? 1 breath every 2 to 3 seconds.
2 to 3.
Okay. So, and that's if you have a tube coming out. Now, if they don't have a tube coming out of their throat, then we have to stop. You must. Hold on. Let me go to me. This is where so many providers do this wrong. We kill so many people because EMS providers get this one step wrong. If they don't have a tube coming out of their throat, which is 99.99% of the people when you get to them, unless they're already intubated for some reason, like if they're already in the hospital or they maybe have a trach or something. But otherwise, if they have it, but even with the trach, but if they don't have a tube coming out of their throat, we never, ever, ever do compressions and ventilations at the same time. Why is that? And this is where, I want you to assess your own performance on the last cardiac arrest you've been on, or your department, your crew. How well are you guys doing on this? And really, like, if you're not doing well or if you're not following the standards, you be the one to change. You may have a lot of old heads at the OGs at the station. They've been doing it their way for a long time, but it's not your way, your way, your way. There really is only one way to do ACLS. Okay, so it's not up to provider preference. This is based on the science. So why do we not do compressions and ventilations at the same time? Unless there's a tube coming out.
Air into their belly.
Yeah. So what's going to happen is when we put all this air, so here's our trachea that goes down to the lungs. Okay. And so we push all this air. Now what's the tube that's kind of behind the trachea? So the trachea is in the front. What's the tube that's behind it?
Esophagus.
We have esophagus. And what does the esophagus lead to?
It's going to lead like to your belly.
Yeah, it leads to the stomach. So what happens when you keep squeezing that bag, or especially when you're trying to ventilate and do compressions at the same time, this is what happens. There's this pressure that builds up when you're squeezing the bag. So this person at the airway is putting positive pressure from their mouth. But this person over here who's doing chest compressions is putting pressure from their chest. This pressure and this pressure, they collide. And air now takes the path of least resistance and it goes down the esophagus and now into the stomach. And so here's what happens. The stomach starts expanding and it keeps expanding. And what do we start pressing on when the stomach keeps expanding? The inferior vena cava. And when we press on the inferior vena cava, what does that do? Oh yeah, it stops blood flow to the heart. So you're pumping on their chest, but there's no blood coming back to their heart. So now you're not pumping any blood to their body. Does that make sense? This is why we never, ever, 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 ever do compressions and ventilations unless there's at the same time, unless there's a tube coming down their throat. This one thing right here, I have seen probably 90% of my colleagues do wrong. Okay. Don't be that person. Never, ever do that.